For decades, military planners simulated a specific geopolitical nightmare, a 21-mile-wide bottleneck connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. In March 2026, those simulations became a physical reality. The trigger point arrived in late February. Joint military strikes launched by the U.S. and Israel struck deep into Iranian territory, degrading missile production facilities and inflicting severe damage on the massive crude export hub at Karg Island. Tehran retaliated immediately. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps mobilized to enforce a complete blockade of the strait. Using naval mines, aerial drones, and swarms of fast boats, they physically shut down all commercial shipping lanes. The United States issued a 48-hour ultimatum. President Donald Trump warned that if the waterway was not reopened, the U.S. military would begin to systematically obliterate Iranian civilian infrastructure, starting with their largest power plants. In a matter of hours, a waterway carrying 1/5 of the world's oil supply became an active combat zone. The diplomatic fallout was instantaneous. A coalition of over 30 countries, led by the United Kingdom and several European allies, issued joint statements condemning the blockade and demanding safe passage. To stabilize the energy markets, the International Energy Agency authorized a massive, coordinated release of strategic petroleum reserves to keep crude oil prices from spiraling out of control. As governments scrambled to protect the energy sector, a secondary supply chain began to collapse. The strait's closure immediately severed the global supply of agricultural nutrients, creating a crisis that gas prices alone couldn't account for. Tracing trade out of the Persian Gulf reveals it as the world's premier fertilizer factory. The blockade eliminated 38% of global nitrate fertilizers and 20% of phosphate supply. Furthermore, 46% of the world's urea is trapped behind the blockade. Removing these inputs from the global market ensures catastrophic harvest failures on every continent. Since natural gas accounts for 80% of the cost of nitrogen fertilizer, the moment natural gas prices doubled, the financial viability of producing fertilizer crashed to zero. Massive production facilities in Qatar, Pakistan, and Bangladesh shut down because they could no longer afford the energy required to run. The shock hit the world's agricultural superpowers next. Brazil faced a 30% deficit in phosphates, and Australian farmers warned their remaining stockpiles would be empty by mid-April. Protectionist panic followed. China halted sulfur exports to secure its own supplies, while India prioritized its dwindling gas reserves for domestic survival. The global food supply chain has no backup for a Gulf blockade. Within 3 weeks, a localized naval standoff became a logistical weapon worldwide. As the economic crisis deepened, the military escalation moved toward civilian targets. The U.S. stands by its threat to strike Iranian power plants to force the strait open. Amnesty International warns that destroying civilian power grids qualifies as a war crime. The resulting loss of electricity would shut down hospitals, water pumping stations, and food refrigeration across the country. Tehran has countered by promising to strike desalination plants in the neighboring Gulf states, the primary source of drinking water for millions of people in the region. This is the logic of modern choke point warfare. When a waterway is sealed, the battle moves from the sea to the civilian infrastructure that keeps millions of people alive. Economists estimate the 2026 crisis is more severe than the agricultural shock of 2022. Unlike previous conflicts, no market substitutes exist for the immense fertilizer volume lost in the Gulf. Even if a ceasefire is signed, the insurance premium trap will keep the strait effectively closed. Astronomical insurance rates for high-risk vessels mean shipping capacity will take months to return to normal. At the United Nations, focus shifted from a localized energy dispute to a projected global calorie deficit, impossible to fill through existing humanitarian aid. The 2026 blockade proved that 21 miles of water in the Middle East effectively controls the price of every meal on Earth.